Welcome back. It is the Front Page Saturday Town Hall Edition, brought to you by Community Build, City of Los Angeles, Independent Professionals Association, and Council President Emeritus Herb Wesson. And we are continuing our conversation, taking your phone calls, 520-KJLH, 520-5554. Dr. Paul Wallace still with us. And we are being joined by Dr. Noelle Reid, MD. You know her from Married to Medicine. She's an internist and a medical doctor. Oh, we don't have her on the phone yet. Okay, well, she'll be with us momentarily. We still have Dr. Paul Wallace joining us and taking your phone calls. Ask a doctor. Let's go to Courtney from Inglewood.
Morning,
Hi,
Dominique. As always, you are doing an absolutely fantastic job.
Thank
I just
you.
wanted to, I have been listening and been focusing on caring for my friends and keeping everybody centered. But I have not, unless I missed it some kind of way, heard any conversation about what's happening with the undocumented children that were taken. Are they safe? Did they move the children?
Okay, Courtney, it's not really our topic, but I've been reading about it, and you're talking about during the pandemic, or you're just talking about in general?
Well, during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. We've had reports of infections within those ICE detention centers, of kids getting sick. We haven't done a show on it yet, but I've reported on it on the news. So I expect more information. Is that something, Dr. Wallace, that you feel like you could comment on?
No, I think it's certainly the treatment that they've had been inadequate, even prior to the pandemic. So I can only imagine it's worse, that they are at very high risk, and there's not the appropriate attention or funding in that direction.
Well, I think about, it's basically the same problem that we have with kids or adults in prisons, right? Whenever you have someone in prison, their conditions are not ideal when it comes to, social distancing and that type of thing.
It does make it difficult. And Dominic, you may know that for 6 years I worked in Chino, and although they were actually the inmates were getting some excellent care, there's just been so much overcrowding. So this issue in particular, when we're talking about spacing, it's problematic.
All right, here she is. We have Dr. Noelle Reid, owner of Trinity Health and Wellness Center in Beverly Hills, and she has an East meets West approach to medicine. She's also a starra. We've seen her on Married to Medicine. Dr. Reid, good morning.
Good morning.
You've been working overtime. Yeah, you've been working overtime to get information out. I see you everywhere on television shows, on social media, just really trying to counteract some of the wrong information that's out there, right?
Yeah, just trying to educate, as best we can, because, as I know you very well know, misinformation disseminates rather quickly, and that can be very dangerous. And even sometimes more dangerous than the virus itself. So it's, best that we try to continue to educate ourselves and keep ourselves lifted too, and just understanding that, we have to continue to take care of each other, and educating each other is one way of doing that.
All right. Well, we got lots of folks with questions, and that's what we wanted to do, is provide people a chance to ask a doctor, what if I'm feeling sick, what do I do? Or if you have other questions regarding this COVID-19, the disease of the coronavirus. We're going to go to Lars from Pasadena. Good morning, Lars.
Hi, good morning. I wanted to ask the medical people, as a bachelor, would it be a prudent thing to engage in recreational sex? And if I were to do that, if both parties are wearing masks, will the two of us be protected?
All righty. I'm sure he's not the only person wondering that. Is it safe for him to have recreational sex if he wears a mask and gloves? I'm not quite sure how that would work, but either Dr. Reid?
I didn't hear part of it. So he said, is it okay to engage in recreational sex?
He's a bachelor. Yeah, he wants to know if he can go out and have sex, just wear a mask.
Well, I think that you are engaging at your own risk. That's a good question in terms of how do we engage each other during this time of quarantine. And I think that, you would be putting yourself at risk for exposure. It would be, I think, somewhat difficult to be with a partner intimately with a mask. And I don't know if it would necessarily be worth it at this time. I think that, what many people are doing right now is just trying to find other ways to engage each other, and that means, doing it at a distance.
Doing it virtually.
Virtual.
But some people,
using all of the things that are available through technology. But what I would say to the caller, and thanks for that call, you have to take a position that everyone is contagious, that everyone has it. And your situation or what you're describing is a certain set, but I get this by people wanting, for example, to go over and see grandmother or their grandparents, and understanding that through your clothes, through the baskets, through the paper bags that you have, you can spread this. So you're taking a great risk, as the doctor said, and if you care for that other person, recognize that you're putting them at risk. And they're putting you at risk.
And even if you don't care for the other person, I mean, because he said recreational, some people out here doing things, but if it's past your breath, there's a lot of heavy breathing that goes with sex that probably isn't necessarily safe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard people saying, well, this position or that position would be safer than this position or that position. But those droplets, they can hang around in the air, right?
Not only in the air, but on the skin, on hair, any clothing. All of those things are, again, increased risk that one can get it.
Right. And we're still finding out other ways that that COVID can be passed. And so we have to think about all bodily fluids that could be at potential risk. So your sweat, you're certainly, that will likely be in place when you're engaging in this activity. So that could, be a risk for, exposure. And, there's even been some concern about, fecal oral, transmission. So if you're engaging in certain positions where you think you may not be coming in contact orally, well, if you're engaging anally, perhaps it could be passed in that realm. So you want to consider all the potential risks and just, understand at this time it's just probably not safe to do if it's not a partner that you have been, that you are living with and it is your lifelong partner.
Right. If you're not basically safer at home with that person.
Right.
Or as Emilian's wife said, if you not got something on the mortgage, then you probably shouldn't be sleeping with them right now. Let's go to Laura Duncan calling us from Los Angeles. Good morning. Laura?
Yes.
Welcome.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the radio.
Oh, thank you. I'm calling because I see that there are more testing stations being brought into play. But who gets tested? Do you wait till you're sick to get tested, or do you go to see if you have it so you make sure you don't give it to someone else?
Great question.
Yeah.
I'd recommend that you be symptomatic, that you're having some of the things that we talked about, fever, shortness of breath. You're feeling ill. There's still a minimum amount of tests that are out there. They aren't abundant, and we want to make sure that those who need to have it because they are symptomatic are getting the test. So I would delay until you're finding some symptoms. It's not a matter of I feel great, but I just like to know.
Right.
Okay.
And that is
very
correct.
much.
So as it stands now, the protocol or what the qualifications are for testing is typically someone who is symptomatic, or where there has been perhaps known exposure. So there are a number of drive-through testing centers that have opened up in the last 2 weeks or so. There have been some in South LA, so at Charles Drew University of Medicine. There's a drive-through center there. Crenshaw Christian Center is another drive-through testing center. There's one that opened up at East LA College. There have been a few testing centers in Antelope Valley, as well as Santa Clarita. So you can actually go online if you are concerned. And again, typically these are for symptomatic individuals, so those who are having symptoms consistent with COVID-19, those that would typically qualify. You can go online to actually complete a questionnaire to see if you would meet criteria. And from that, they would allow you to schedule an appointment, because you would also need an appointment to go to any of these testing centers. You would not be able to just kind of show up for a test. So I do believe that the website is coronavirus.lacity.org/testing. So that would be a good resource to use. And as you go through the questionnaire, they'll let you know if you qualify, and then you'll be able to schedule from there to become tested.
Yeah, there's 30 sites now, so there's a lot of different places you can go, but you absolutely need an appointment. We do have the links up at kjlhradio.com for both the city and the county, and they are offering free testing if you have symptoms. If you don't have symptoms, they're not going to offer free testing.
Dominique, I'd like to add one other thing. It's a little bit of an aside. And most of the listeners who have heard me before know that I'm a dermatologist. And although it seems to be one step away from the virus, I want to put it out that my patients that have psoriasis, that have atopic dermatitis, that have eczema, these diseases can also have a tremendous emotional component associated with them. And many of you are suffering. If you're having a problem, you need to get in contact with your primary care doctor. For those who are my patients, you need to get in contact with me, because we need to get your disease, the one that you have, not the COVID virus, we need to have that under control, because your immune system is being challenged by both the disease process that you have that you need to keep under control and the fact that the pandemic is out. So don't wait. If you're feeling anything, any of the symptoms, again, if you're having fevers, if you're feeling an exacerbation, or let's say the psoriasis you have is getting worse, get in contact with your doctor and get that under control.
All right, we're going to go to Carnell calling us from Los Angeles. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How you doing, Dominique?
Good, good.
My question to the doctors are, before you get sick, is there any type of certain foods that I should stay away from, and stuff like dairy, cheese? Is any of that type of stuff, would that help weaken the immune system? And foods that I could take that help my immune system before I get sick?
Yeah, he's asking about foods to make his immune system stronger. Actually, we have talked about this, but I think it's a great question. Mm-hmm. Dr. Reid, you want to tackle that?
That's an excellent question. So I think it's important. Prevention is always key, and we want to do those things that help to boost our immune system. So certainly staying away from pro-inflammatory foods would be helpful. And you mentioned some. So typically dairy can be pro-inflammatory. Heavy intake of meat, so, beef or pork, can be pro-inflammatory. Anything that's processed. So if it comes out of a can, a box, or your freezer, it's probably been processed. And that also can be pro-inflammatory, because really at the end of the day, inflammation is the root cause of all disease, right? So whether we're talking about heart disease or diabetes, thyroid disease, or fighting an infectious disease, inflammation is the main issue. So you want to incorporate things into your diet that help to minimize inflammation. And so that typically means increasing foods in your diet that are whole. So fruits and veggies, trying to get at least 5 to 6 servings of fruits and vegetables on a daily basis. those that have lots of color, so kale, spinach, berries, those are things that will help to boost our antioxidant levels. You want to also make sure that you drink water. It's necessary for us to hydrate ourselves well, and that also aids in our ability to fight off infection because we need our mucous membrane to be well hydrated in order to fight off infection or pathogens that try to enter through the mucous membranes. And typically that's how a virus enters our body, is through our nose, our mouth, our eyes. So we want to make sure those areas are hydrated. So that means drinking water consistently. And for most adults, that's 2 to 3 liters a day. And then I think it's also helpful, too, if you do take perhaps like a multivitamin, just to make sure that you are getting those vitamins and minerals that you need that you may not be fully getting from your diet, although it's best to get those from food first, but not all of us are able to do so. Perhaps vitamin C as a boost, vitamin B as an immune booster. So those are some, very basic things that you can add to your diet to boost your immune system.
All right. Let's go to Tina calling us from Whittier. Hi, Tina. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind this morning?
So my question is, back in January, I was sick around January 10th. My doctor said it probably was the flu. So I was wondering, maybe during this COVID, when that was going on, but they didn't know at that time. Could that have been possible?
Yes.
The answer is yes. So how would she know? I mean, how would they know if they, because now they're saying that we could have had COVID in California as far back as November, December. We have a lot of visitors from Italy, a lot from China. This is a big hub of tourism. How would we know if we'd been sick already with that?
Well, the only way we could know is if you got tested and you had antibody to that. Mm-hmm. But that would be more of a sort of a what they call an academic curiosity. Right now, you still need to have all of the safe practices because, as we mentioned earlier, it's not shown yet that there's total immunity. The other thing is that a lot of people forget that although we have the COVID going on, all the other viruses are still out. So, yes, you can get the flu, but it may not be the COVID-19. Mm-hmm. This is in addition to what we would normally have during this period of time.
I guess what you're saying is since it doesn't necessarily inoculate us from getting it again, there's no particular reason why we would need to go get tested if we're feeling 100% better now.
Correct. And again, the false hope of saying, oh, well, I don't have to worry about it so much. No, I think everyone needs to practice the whole thought of being as safe as you possibly can, not only for you, but for your loved ones and people who you come in contact with.
But they are working on developing, more antibody tests so that we have a clearer view as to, how much of the population has been impacted with COVID-19, as well as potentially to aid with treatment for those perhaps that have antibodies, which you may have heard of as well, where they're using essentially the plasma from those who have antibodies to the COVID-19 to use in treatment who are gravely ill. There actually is a study that's being done at USC. The LA Department of Public Health has partnered with USC in doing an antibody study. I don't know if they're still recruiting participants, but I believe just perhaps a week or a few days ago, they were allowing for those to come to one of their sites to do a drive-through antibody test for COVID-19. So there may be something that is still going on there in terms of participation. There may be a few community facilities that are offering antibody tests, but I would say to test with caution, because as it stands now, there's only one FDA-approved antibody test, and I believe that's by the company Stellax. So not all of the antibody tests that may be in the community are FDA approved, which means that they may not be accurate. But I do think in the coming weeks there will be more availability in terms of having access to testing for antibodies. So I think it is important for us to know, who was infected, and perhaps also allow for us to reopen society, essentially, to understand who may be immune at this point and how we can move forward getting people back to work.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think, I've been reading about fake tests out there, not just antibody tests, but fake home COVID tests. And as of right now, there is no home COVID test that's been approved by the FDA. So if you see one on the internet or down on Crenshaw, it's not real, and do not buy it.
There's no home test for COVID or antibodies, but there is one FDA-approved antibody test that you may be able to get through either a clinical situation, or there are a few private facilities that do likely have the test.
All right, we're going to take a break right now. We have another COVID-19 survivor who's very close to us here at KJLH who's going to share his story, and we will be taking your questions all the way until 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, of course, the great Guy Black will take the mic, and he's going to have a lot of fun in store for you, some great music. That's coming up at 10. But right now, 520-KJLH, 520-5554. Just add your area code. It's radio free, 102.3 KJLH and KJLHradio.com. And this one brought to you by the Independent Professionals Association, Council President Emeritus Herb Wesson, the City of Los Angeles, and Community Build.